Hello everyone, this is Anil. Welcome to Education Tat. We are working on Flowable series and there are a lot of videos that we already uploaded in here and there are more sessions to come and join this series. So today what we are going to discuss, we are going to talk about some of the detail level analysis on the case CMMN model. Let's have a look. You know that we are working on loan application and this example has a number of details in it that are worth pointing out to give you ideas about how you might model things or to highlight the benefits of different approaches. This is not meant to be a deep guide on CMMN, BPMN or DMN, but this is good to understand or good to know thing. So let's looking at the case model. For that we will be opening our design, and from cases directly we can jump onto our loan case model. Using CMMN is a way to look at describing a problem in a different way from BPMN. With CMMN, you are describing how the overall case and its components are related. You can think of it declaring what the problem looks like rather than the sequence of steps needed to complete it. BPMN is more about getting from one point to another, the procedure to follow. As I mentioned earlier, that this is where you can define the path. You can express that something follows another in both CMMN and BPMN, but they are different and using the right one for the job is a skill to learn. With CMMN, you need to think about it more as expressing what might be available for execution at any point in time, rather than being given the next step to execute explicitly. So if you see it, these are like having three stages: applying for loan, managing loan, and closing loan. So stages, you remember the loan case had a case plan, right? This is the case plan with three stages. Loan stage, and look at the attribute and you can see that show state is enabled. This is by default. I'm talking about this show state is enabled. This is one by default file stage and says that it should be shown in the case header for the end user. You might have some stages in your case that are useful for defining the behavior but are not useful for the end user to know about. Looking at the stages attribute, you can also see the autocomplete is enabled. This means that the case or a stage will complete automatically if there is nothing active, no open task, running process or the like. It is possible for some actions to be active for manually starting something, and these will stop a case or a stage completing if not autocomplete. If you look at the bottom of the case and a couple of stages, you'll see a solid black icon. So this solid black icon, it shows that the autocomplete is enabled or disabled. So this is where you drive this. Setting a complete stage or case as autocompleting may be too wide an impact for some models. As an alternative, you can select individual elements and mark them as a completion neutral. Select the applying of a loan stage and setting autocomplete off. Then select the abandon application user event and set it to completion neutral. That is very much possible doing with this. So then select the abandon application. This will give you a couple of options. When we select it, we can see that some of the options like completion neutral is also here, which means you can do the same to the repay early task in the managing loan, removing the auto completion from the stage and adding completion neutral to the manual task. Let's go back to applying for a loan stage and look up something in detail, which is more like where we can have two elements, a process task and our user is an event listener. To look deeper into the user event abandon application, select it. Let's select this one. If you can remember running the case, you will recall there was an action in the UI named abandon application. And this is something most of the time when you are doing live trainings, you'll see that people ask about how the abandoned application actually came up. So this is where you can refer this, and it was there because of this element in the model. Any user event that is available for execution will show in the UI as an action available for the user to select. In this model, the user event is available if the applying for a loan stage is active, which is at the start of the case, as it has no entry criteria, more of which later has. So here you can define the abandoned application, which will start coming in. In a user events attribute, you can see an option to reference a start form, this form. So when we selected this activity, we can see a start form. In our model, this references to a form name reason. If you click on this, it will open up a form. It has a text field for capturing the reason, which will be kept as part of the history of the case. The form field could have been passed on to subsequent processing if the user event had not been linked to existing the whole case. Now let's move into the case. We can see this process, and we can click and open the process, but giving a reference like how this is linked to a process reference, which means this case itself have this process, and that process can be opened from this link, which is a loan application, and we already talked about in the example that we covered earlier. There is an important point about variable scopes. If you know a process is always going to be called from another case or process, and that a variable is set in them that you like to access, then there is another approach than having to map variables in and out. In the loan example, within the loan application process, anytime you needed the full name, you could access or use the path notation of variable to access it. The common use would be root.fullname that we saw in last session, or parent.fullname, depending on how you plan to use the process. Using root means it will look at the highest level item in any nested calls or processes and cases. So as you know, like this is more like a JSON structure. So for accessing any attribute at the root level, you can all use root.fullname or root dot the variable name. Using parent just looks one level up, whereas root is obviously at the top level. Then there are one important thing to understand is the criteria. One of the expressive feature of CMMN is criteria. Entry ones that determine if an item is available or active. So let's go to our loan case again. Criteria can be standalone or linked to other case items. So if you look at this diagram, this diamond shaped icon, this is the criteria for passing from one stage to the another one. What it says, if the loan decision is accept, then it move to the managing loan. Similarly, this is event deferred. This is not event deferred. So you will see that the notation is also changed. This is in a little golden color, and this is just black. So it has an additional condition that has to be met for it to become active. If the applying for loan stage completes, but the condition is not met, then there is no active or available items. So the case itself is complete. The condition in this example is basically testing if the decision made in the first stage was an acceptance of the loan application, right? However, with CMMN, the entry criteria is tested when the case starts, before the first stage has done and before the loan decision variable has been created. To account for this, you can think about this. You can use one of the built-in functions to get variables value, and if the variable is undefined, to create it with some default value. In this example, the variable will be set to null if it does not already exist, meaning the test for it being equal to accept will fail. Now let's look at managing loan. So in managing loan, we can see there are exit criteria for completion from each item to the other in this stage. This is a very powerful example of something that is complex to do as clearly in BPM. What it means is that if one of the item completes first, then it then exits the other item. Both items are available or active, but only one of them is needed for the stage to complete. So in this one, you can see that get repayments or repay early, both are linked with this diamond sign. So what we are saying, the effect of this is that the get repayments process gets started automatically, which in turn creates tasks to get each repayment. If this process completes and all repayment tasks complete, then the process task will complete and the exit criteria on repay early in return will make it complete. This is important to understand. You may see the earlier videos where we have shown this more like a practical use case where get repayments was coming in a recurring manner until the repay early task was completed. This will leave all items in the stage as complete. So in repay, you remember we provided the amount in one go, and that is where the task was completed, and that is where it was exited from this option, right? So this is the human task. This one is the human task, and this is coming in more like this is referring to a repayment details page. Okay, so this is important, and maybe you can go and check the example that we talked about. However, if the user triggers the repay early manually activated task, then this task will become active alongside any repayment task, which means both will be in parallel. If the user completes the repay early task, then the total loan needs to be considered repaid. So the repayment process and any of its tasks will be completed. When the managing loan stage completes, it triggers the closing loan stage, which has a no additional condition. This one, it has no additional condition on its entry criteria, as you may have noticed. So for that, you can just click on it. You can see that this has no condition mentioned in here. That's why it is not coming in the golden stage or the golden icon, the diamond icon. That is how you can differentiate while looking at it. So these are some of the high level inputs on what are the constructs of any CMMN model and how this is being constructed overall. We talked about that it has certain stages, it has some entry and exit criteria. Then there are some of the auto completion feature and then the abandon which comes on the UI. Let me know if you have any question or doubt on the topic that we talked about. I will be happy to assist you on that, and that's where we will learn and grow together. Thank you for watching this.